Today in current events from a Christian perspective, Disney is remaking Snow White again, I guess. Apparently, after much backlash to the 7 not dwarves but very diverse creature people and the self-proclaimed removal of the love story from the Snow White story, Disney has decided to remake a bunch of the movie, which is great, but in the end, we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, back in reality, Notre Dame, a Catholic university, is hosting a drag event or class or something. Well, I guess that's not really back to reality, but also, we check in with the young generation who apparently is tired of all the sex scenes in movies and just wants to see people be friends. We'll look at Christian worldview perspectives of all these stories and more. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Well, welcome back to Church Public. I am your host, Matt Odegaard, as always, and really appreciate you stopping by today. I want to ask, if you haven't already, to hit the like button, the subscribe button, hit all the buttons. I just want to be helpful to you, so I hope that I am. If this is helpful, you can share this with some friends. I want to show you current events from a Christian perspective so that you can live out your faith wherever you happen to go, because more and more we're just going to be in an environment wherever we are that just doesn't like God, doesn't like Christianity, doesn't like really anything that we have to say or do, as we saw even with the new House Speaker when he said, hey, I just believe in the Bible. They said, well, you're a radical extremist, as some of the news reports said. Anyway, that's more and more what we're going to be getting if we follow the Bible, if we do what it says, if we follow after Jesus and try to live in the way that a Christian should live. So I want to help you do that by examining current events from a Christian perspective and help you live out your faith. So we'll look at that. Again, if this is helpful, hit the like button, the subscribe, share. For your audio listeners, thank you. I really appreciate you. If you want to see some of the videos, pictures, things that are also on this particular podcast show, you can navigate to the YouTubes. It's probably up there, though sometimes it's not because of reasons and things that they don't like me doing or saying or showing, or who knows. Anyway, if that is the case, I'll try to post it somewhere else. But for now, you can listen on audio. It's great on audio. If you want to see video, go check out the video. All right, let's keep going. Let's get into some news. This one is, I guess, titled Nomance, right? Not romance, but Nomance. The Gen Z, the youngest generation, and some of Gen A, which is after Gen Z, and that's really confusing, and then Millennials, which is before Gen Z. Anyway, all of them together, mostly Gen Z, though, is saying that they would like fewer sex scenes. A new study out of UCLA shows that Gen Z, young people from 13 to 24 years old, are not super interested in seeing sex on television or movies. In fact, they'd like less of it. What they'd mostly like to see is content about friendship that isn't romantic and platonic. Again, that's just friendly relationships. Here's a quote from the study. While it's true that adolescents want less sex on TV and in movies, what the survey is really saying is that they want more and different kinds of relationships reflected in the media they watch, said study co-author Yalda Yules, probably pronounced that wrong, but who knows, adjunct professor in the psychology department of UCLA. I'm not sure she's right, but let's keep going. 44.3% of those surveyed said romance in media is overused, and 39% said they'd like to see more characters who are not even remotely interested in romantic love. And then it went on into the LGBTQIA plus hashtag acronym, etc. And we don't really need to talk about that part because that's everything these days. But here's the big thing. 51.5% said they, quote, want to see more content focused on friendships and platonic relationships, end quote. This was published in Teens and Screens report, stated that Gen Z's values and desires reach depths beyond what society has typically explored. Now, what I'd like to talk about here is that this just shouldn't be surprising to Christians. We know that sex is not just an action. It has incredible spiritual consequences. It was designed for one man and one woman for life. Read Genesis 1 and 2 and the rest of the Bible. But anyway, even though I would guess that none of those surveyed, and of course none of the people running the survey would say anything like that, it still holds true because truth is just truth. But the why behind what they are saying, to me, seems very clear. They already know what is behind that door. That is the sex in movies door. For the repressed culture born in the 50s, they desired the sexual revolution to find out how far they could take all of this shenanigans. Now, however, it's just everywhere. Sex is everywhere. It's even in the elementary classroom. That's what we talk about here all the time. These crazy radical sex cultists that just want to show pride everywhere. These poor kids are over it. They realize what the previous generation did not. You cannot find happiness in sex. Sure, there's fulfillment in the marital relationships, but empty physical acts are just that, empty. And whether or not they can say that out loud, that's just the reality of it. And again, anyone who has actually read the Bible knows this plainly, because pretty much every book of the Bible has something to say about that, because that's just the reality of the way God has designed relationships. But this society continues to be surprised when people come upon that reality. Anyway, just thought that was a really good story, and it helps us understand the worldview, not only of Christianity and the Bible, but what's happening in the culture. And I'd like to turn that into a positive outlook as well, because what it shows to me, and hopefully to you, is this culture is fed up with all the silliness and lies that the devil has been selling for years and years and years, that you can find fulfillment in anything that you want to do, anytime, anywhere. And the reality is that's just not true. It's never been true, but people have believed that lie for years and years and years. So now this younger generation is saying, hey, we see that we're not satisfied with this. We're not happy with this. Our parents are not happy. No one is happy with anything that we're doing. So there's got to be another way. And whether or not they say that out loud, again, that's really the bottom line, the foundation of what is going on here. And the good news is you and I, Christian, have an answer for the hope that we have. All right, let's talk about another story here. Now, there was a tragic shooting up in Maine a week or so ago, and it is terrible. I'm not going to report much on that. There's been a lot of reporting done on it. However, the left always grabs onto these opportunities to talk about how bad weapons are in general, and guns specifically, and certain kinds of guns very specifically. I'm not going to go in and out of all of this, but it is humorous to me when people think they know what certain guns do and clearly don't, and clearly have never seen or held or much less fired the gun that they're actually talking about. So this is Joy Behar from The View, who talks about a certain type of gun that is the scary kind. Anyway, let's hear what she has to say, and then we'll talk about it.
Sarah didn't get a chance to weigh in on the topic of what happened in Maine and AR-15s.
Yeah, I would love to see an assault weapons ban. Like President Reagan, I don't believe they're a sport or hunting instrument. It's like shooting fish in a bucket, but that's my
But
take.
also, if you shoot with an AR-15, let's say you shoot a deer, you can't eat it. Because you basically demolish
In addition
the
to that, but the hunt is about an actual difficult process, not massacring bodies of any kind. But my point is, I'd love to see that.
So, sorry, it's hard not to laugh. So the point that she makes is that if you shoot a deer with an AR-15, it just destroys the whole animal. I think she's confusing the AR-15 with a rocket launcher or something. I mean, sorry, just the ignorance. That's what's funny to me. It's just that, like, hey, you clearly don't understand how anything works, much less weapons or things. Maybe that's what you think, like weapons of mass destruction is what actually like random people just carry around all the time. But that's not how any of these things works. And really the point that I want to point to here is this is the problem in our general society. People just don't know anything about anything. And this is where it becomes a problem when people, talking heads on the news or wherever, just start shouting these opinions or ideas that literally are based in no reality at all. And apparently people watch this show. Apparently people really think the ladies that are talking here have a good opinion, but they don't. Like, none of that was real, what they talked about. And, you know, people can have their opinions and that's fine. But the problem that I'm seeing is they're not based in reality. They're not real opinions about real things that happen and real equipment and real anything. An AR-15 is not a rocket launcher, and clearly this lady has no idea how one of them operates. She's clearly never seen one or used one. And anyway, we don't need to talk much about the weaponry side of things, though to me that's interesting. I just want to talk about the side of things that's more, theological or more philosophical. Like, if you don't know anything about anything, how can you govern yourself? And that's really like when you get back to the foundation of America, John Adams, for instance, talking about how we have to be a moral people in order to govern ourselves. And what that really means is, from a biblical perspective, you have to be able to utilize self-control and self-government of yourself. Like you have to use self-control to do the right thing, even when you don't have to. But you have to be able to monitor yourself and do the right thing. And we can't do that, especially if we don't know what anything is. This extends from people talking about this kind of thing to people who, I mean, I see all over the internets and the social medias talking about the Bible who clearly have never read it. And this person clearly has no idea about anything like that. And so this represents people all over the place, not just our leadership, but all manner of person. I'll play a little bit of this. This was a video that was floating around a little bit ago where a guy goes out and asks some questions of people. To me, basic questions, but let's just see how this goes to see what, regular Americans know.
How many stars are on the United States flag?
103?
103?
Yeah. 32.
What ocean is on the east side of the United States?
What ocean? Can I Google it?
You guys know this.
I know this. I don't know this.
What country is the Queen of England from?
I'm not a politics guy, man. I ain't gonna lie, I don't know. I really don't know.
Just take a guess, like what country is the Queen of England from?
Europe? I don't know. I don't know, I just took a guess.
What's the capital of the United States?
I mean, that's probably enough of that. You get the idea. It goes on and on and on and on, and no one knows anything. How many stars are on the flag? I mean, seriously, you don't know? You don't know which ocean? You don't know? At one point, I don't know if we got to that question, he says, what country does the Queen of England govern? People, like, this is a problem. This is a problem when we just don't know anything. And then you have people getting out there, whether it's on national news or these talk shows or even the internet, and just saying things and they don't know. And I'm not claiming to be any kind of expert particularly. I've spent a lot of time studying the Bible, theology, philosophy, a bunch of other things. But, I'll tell you when something is my opinion. You don't have to believe me. I would invite you to check and figure out, if my points hold true. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't scare me at all. But these people who think that they know things and claim to be experts and then clearly don't know anything, that's kind of a problem. And more than that, this poor generation just doesn't know anything. But we want to help them. And that's the thing, right? We want to educate. We want to help. I want people to go and read their Bible. I think you, if you're listening, please, today, go and read part of your Bible. You don't have to read the whole thing. You don't have to be overwhelmed by how many pages are in it. Just choose something. Choose the Gospel of John. It's a little more than halfway through. Start there. Start reading through that today and then keep going. Or, read other Gospels, read the letters, go back and read some of the Old Testament things. Anything. Just start reading. I guarantee it will make your life better. Not in the way that, all your dreams will come true, but you'll understand the meaning of life and your place in it. And that's a really important thing. I think a lot of people are struggling with meaning and where they are and where they live and how you can be in this world and be a part of it in God's kingdom. And I think the more we can live in that, the better. Speaking of living in the kingdom, I mean, again, I'm not a Catholic. I've said that before. I'm Protestant. And by the way, depending on when you're listening to this, happy Reformation Day. So sorry, Catholics, but I'm on that side of the world. Anyway, Notre Dame, a very famous Catholic university, is now apparently hosting a drag show. So, guys, I don't want to read these stories, but this is Christian Worldview, and these are current events. So Notre Dame is doing a drag show, kind of a drag. Apparently, it's some kind of like either seminar or class. I don't even understand it, but depending on when you're watching this, it occurs on November 3rd. So it's either a couple of days from now or today, or it just happened, who knows. But the interesting thing about this story to me is a bunch of students signed a thing and said, no, we don't want this. So November 3rd, they're holding a drag show despite opposition from hundreds of students who said the event contradicts the principles of Roman Catholicism. I would agree. This is not me saying it. This is the students at the school, Notre Dame. This drag event is supposed to be the conclusion of a 1-credit college course entitled What a Drag, Drag on Screen, Variations and Meanings. That's the name of the course. Oh boy. According to the description for the class, taught by gender studies Professor Pamela Wojcik, students will be, quote, asked to read essays on drag, write weekly reflections, attend class discussions, attend weekly screenings, as well as a symposium on drag and performance November 3rd, which apparently includes a drag person. The Irish Rover, a student newspaper at the university, published an opinion piece criticizing the choice to host a school-sponsored drag show, quote, in supporting lies about the human person, lies that say men can be women, and that a minstrel show of femininity is a legitimate art form. This is the quote, not me talking. The university is not only actively working against her mission, but permitting irreparable damage to its community and image, end quote. That was written by the publication's editor-in-chief, and I would agree with all of that. Over 400 students have emailed the school to raise concerns, but have been sent an automated email from the university citing, quote, freedom of expression and, quote, academic freedom, end quote. 2 students published an open letter to the university further explaining their concerns. Quote, this event is not for the sake of study or dialogue. It is not the result of faculty or student research. It is not for the sake of academic inquiry. If this is academic freedom, then the phrase is meaningless. Academic freedom should not be used as a weapon of opinionated activism, end quote. Correct. And we need more of this. We need more students who understand that freedom is not really doing whatever you want whenever you want to do it. We've talked about this extensively on Church Public, that freedom means doing what is in the bounds of permissible and being able to do that freely. Freedom does not mean doing whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, to whomever you want to do it. It never has meant that. Never, not ever. Though secular liberalism would try to tell you that it is, that you can just do whatever you want, whenever you want. But even by the own bounds of secular liberalism, that doesn't work. It cannot work, because if you do you and I do me, eventually we're going to crash into each other and chaos is going to happen. Again, I use this example all the time, but please take this example. A stoplight has lights that say go and say stop. You don't get to go whenever you want to go. You can't you be you at a stoplight. Otherwise, you will cause a crash, maybe even death. And yet, in this world, we think those rules don't apply. The rules of reality don't apply. The rules of biology don't apply. The rules of creation don't apply. And we can just do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it, to whomever we want to do it. And we think that it's okay in that sense. But of course it's not. It never has been. And these students are finally pushing back against it, which I think is great. By the way, this university, Notre Dame, was founded by Roman Catholic priests in 1842, and yet has been moving more and more towards secular liberalism, as I would say. Abortion, homosexuality, other cultural phenomena opposed to the school's professed adherence to Christian morality. The school's mission statement itself says, quote, dedicated to the pursuit and sharing of truth for its own sake, end quote. Again, even in that mission statement, truth is truth. You can lie and make things up. You can try to do that, but it doesn't change what the truth is. University of Notre Dame President John Jenkins has defended its decision to host this drag show, saying, again, freedom of expression is their highest value. Quote, we recognize that sometimes the views expressed may be disagreeable to others or even make some uncomfortable. We should strive to combine a commitment to inquiry and dialogue in pursuit of truth with a commitment to show respect and charity towards those whom we disagree, end quote. This is what we have to know and have to understand. We have to actually say no to this. No, you can love someone, but sometimes loving someone is not doing whatever they want to do, especially when that thing is not good for them or anyone else. And we have to begin to have enough backbone and courage to say, no, not everything is good for you. And everyone knows this inherently, but for some reason we suspend our belief and just pretend like everything is okay. But it's not. Immorality is a sin when it is a sin. It just is. It's not to be celebrated. You don't need to practice it. You don't need to study it. This doesn't make sense in any other context. What other sin would you possibly do this with? Practice it. Study it. Alcohol, alcoholism, lying, stealing, cheating, murder? Of course not. None of these sins would you practice them or encourage them or try them. This doesn't make any sense. And yet, in the sense of morality, which clearly is biblical in guidelines that we can and cannot do, we think, well, let's practice what's good and what's bad and see what we think. What? This literally doesn't make sense, but this is how we're treating it. This is how the president is saying we should. No, we can't do that. All right. Speaking of doing weird things, Disney is now remaking their Snow White again, I guess. So Snow White, according to the Hollywood Reporter, Disney delays Snow White and Elio, it's another movie, and removes another movie, doesn't really matter for this story. Disney's Bob Iger and other Hollywood CEOs told SAG-AFTRA earlier this week the deadline to salvage their 2024 theatrical slates is all but upon them. So there was a writer's strike and whatever. But what we really need to understand is Disney has decided that they're going to redo their Snow White again after they announced that they were. Now, remember, there were these 7, I don't know what to call them, creature people. If any of you remember the original Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, they were 7 dwarves in Disney's story, but in this new story, apparently they were not dwarves. Let's see, here's the picture of what they were. So if you're not watching their 7 diverse creatures, maybe one of them is a dwarf. I don't know. 6 of them are definitely not dwarves. Anyway, this was, we talked about the story a month or 2 ago, and these were the 7 people that they chose before. And apparently, because all of you said, hey, this doesn't make any sense, Disney on Friday announced it's delaying the release of its live-action Snow White movie starring Rachel Ziegler from March 22, 24 to March 21, 25. Now, they blame the writer's strike, but I think we all know what's going on here. So here's an AI picture of the new Snow White. Again, if you're just listening, it kind of looks like the old Snow White with what I would call dwarves. But hey, you know, and just as a reminder, here is what Rachel Ziegler said about Snow White just a couple weeks ago.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie.
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Yeah. So anyway, in other news, apparently they're delaying the production by a year and potentially redoing a bunch of the scenes, and the dwarves are not the same. And hey, we're going to see what happens. So we'll see what happens. And by the way, in related news, Daily Wire's new production company, Bentkey, is making their own Snow White starring Brett Cooper, of the comment section. I won't play the trailer here. You should probably go watch it. It looks pretty good. Being a Brothers Grimm fan myself, I think it actually, excuse me. I think it actually looks pretty good, but we'll see. So Disney, hey, your move, I guess. All right, continuing on, we are moving from Disney to other performing arts, I guess you would say. Derek Webb, formerly of Caedmon's Call, but I guess once again of Caedmon's Call because they've been doing reunion tours, went to the Dove Awards and decided to bring along his, I don't know how to say this story. He decided to bring along his lesbian singer friend, Grace Baldridge, and another drag queen, Flamey Grant, as his guests while he was wearing a dress. So that happened. And listen, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this story. I just don't care all that much. But I think it's worth talking about in the larger cultural context with a Christian worldview. And here's why. And if you don't know Caedmon's Call, if you didn't grow up with Caedmon's Call, I get it. You're like, who is this guy and what is this story? And we don't really care. Okay. For some of us, we did grow up with Caedmon's Call. They were a huge worship or crossover Christian band. And they had a big influence on the church, on church worship, and the worship music scene. So it's kind of weird that the lead singer is doing this now. Now, this is not a new story. He has deconverted or deconstructed, depending on which word you want to use. He's been called an ex-evangelical instead of an evangelical. He's moved away from everything, questioning everything. Whatever. I mean, that's nothing new. We're seeing that more and more and more. And I have a lot of thoughts as to why the worship scene and all of these main leaders did this from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and on. But my question comes down to this. Why did the Dove Awards let them in? Why didn't they just say, no, you don't get to come in here because this doesn't support the values that we hold as the Dove Awards? The Dove Awards, again, are a celebration of Christian worship music. I'm actually going to show you in a minute the mission statement published by the Dove Awards on the Dove Awards website of what their mission is. Because I have a question. What are the Dove Awards celebrating? What part of Christianity is this celebrating? It's not celebrating worship music, clearly. It's not celebrating biblical values or family structure or biblical families or anything like that. I think the controversial thing here is not that this particular person or people are wearing dresses or whatever. It's that this is a Christian worship event and these people are acting very not Christian. I think this is where the cultural problem lies. As a culture, we, for some reason, just can't say, no, this isn't the way Christ would act. This isn't the way you should be. Of course, we should love everyone. We should love them. But are we celebrating worship music and the church and worship culture? Or are we saying, yes, guys can walk around in dresses? Those two things are kind of mutually exclusive. They're not the same. Living in your sin and being completely unrepentant and doing whatever you want to do is another form of saying, I choose me, not the way Jesus says, hey, deny yourself, pick up your cross, stop doing what you want to do and sinning, live the way you're supposed to live, and follow Christ. I know I'm the biggest sinner of them all, and I have no place to say I don't sin, but my goal in everyday life is to be more like Christ. When men put on dresses, that's not trying to be more like Christ. So the controversial thing here is not that this troop of people is walking around because sinners are going to sin. It's that this organization, the Dove Awards, let them in. Why not just say, no, this is a Christian event and you are acting very not Christian? The Dove mission statement, I'm going to show this to you. It is to expose, promote, and celebrate the gospel through music. Are you celebrating the gospel by letting men in dresses in? That doesn't seem particularly the same. And then you probably won't be able to read this. I'll read a little bit of it for you, but I was checking out the Dove website and they actually have a statement of faith based on Bible verses. Again, this is probably too small for you to read. Here, I'll make it just a little bit bigger. But this statement of faith is really important because it's based on the Bible. And I like that. I like that it's based on the Bible. But this is what they have said, right? So they say, we believe the Bible is the inspired word of God, 2 Timothy 3:16. That's a great statement. We believe that one God exists in three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Sure. I'll skip a couple of these. You kind of get the idea, but you can read through them if you want to. You can pause the video, do whatever you want to do. I think the biggest thing is that very first one. And we could go line by line in them, but if you even just start with the very first one, that the Bible is the word of God, doesn't that mean that you should read the Bible and do what it says? And that's That's the important thing. Are you going to follow the Bible or are you not? This is listen, none of this is necessary. This is just an organization and they do music things. They didn't have to put a mission statement up. They didn't have to put a statement of faith up using Bible verses saying that the Bible is the very foundation of everything that they do and the foundation of God and the foundation of the kingdom of God, and we should follow after that. I didn't ask them to put that up, but they did. They said their organization begins with a foundation of the Bible. So why are they not living up to their own standard? And the answer is just obvious. It's very clear. They don't care anymore. They're more afraid of the woke mob crushing their business than actually living out their faith as an organization. That's what I'm seeing. And maybe that's not surprising to those that understand, but this is the way the woke industrial complex works. It chisels away the supports from the inside out until all that is left is a hollowed out structure unable of carrying its own weight. And that's what we see. I'm not mad at Derek Webb and his trans friends. I don't really care that much. I'm sad that they're living in this way, but they're just living out the secular dream of pretending to be a different gender and doing whatever they want to do, living their truth. That seems to be all the rage these days. However, I do take notice of a stated Christian organization that is not acting very Christian. I think this does have pretty big worldview significance. This is the question that I continually raise for you and for me. Will you live out your faith when it becomes costly? Or will you just fold like the rest of this evangelical culture? I think this is a really important question that you have to deal with and resolve to live in one way or another. And that faith is going to be tested. So we'll end with this verse. I think this is a great verse, something that you can stand on. This is out of James 1:22. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, but do what it says. Just a great word for you and for me. Something I try to do every single day. I hope that you do too. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, I hope that you will keep the faith. Once again, thank you so much for joining Church Public today. If this was helpful to you, like, subscribe, share, send it to your friend. I want to help you live out your faith by looking at current events from a Christian perspective. Love you guys. I'll see you next time, and keep the faith.